Round 2 of the Supercross series. This time we're going to run through the pits and look at some of these Works 250s. We showed you all the 450s at the opening round, and we made our way into the Troy Lee Designs Red Bull KTM pits, and we got Shane McElrath's bike here. Shane's on the cusp of his first win this season. He's been on the box both times. Definitely a title contender. He's right there in the points chase. And these bikes are really meticulously looked after. I mean, I appreciate even like the way this throttle housing is polished. You look at these little carbon fiber bits that cover both the brake and the clutch, and they just snap on. They're made by some company that they know and don't sell them, but they're really cool custom pieces. And you look at just the details. This WP stuff is obviously factory, really trick. Things are massive. They're a kite team, so they run a lot of kite products. You'll see the hubs. They've also got a part of the clutch cylinder slave as cylinders on there that's all a kite piece. I've actually never seen those before. So a lot of cool little trick parts. Carbon fiber front disc guard. These guys running the DID Dirt Star rims. We talked a little bit about how last time with the other bikes about the stiffness of the rims, like the really high-end rims that are really stiff are almost providing too much feedback. So some of these race teams are going to the, I don't want to say the softer rims, but rims that flex a little bit more to give the riders a better feel. And again, you can see with a lot of our KTM teams that we've looked at, they've got the spokes wire tied, kind of old school. Akrapovic or Akrapovic, however you want to say it. They do all the carbon for these things. All right, obviously you get to the engine here, you see all the titanium nuts and bolts on here that are beautiful and pretty. Full Hinson clutch system. All the cases have a coating on them, as I mentioned before, to keep them more resistant to dirt stains and any kind of damage. Full Works WP shock, titanium spring, and the pegs, all billet and helo concepts, titanium. And just if you notice, just everything, these bikes have already been through a mud race and another Supercross, and they still look brand new. These guys do a full teardown every single week, down to the frame. Every nut and bolt's pulled off, re-greased, everything's rebuilt. These things are cared for meticulously. All right, so their seats serve two functions here. Yes, these grips kind of hold you from sliding too far back, but it's also the three-stripe. That's Adidas's logo there, so this is an Adidas-sponsored team. Troy's had a good relationship with them going. FMF system, these are designed specifically for the team. You can even see the power bomb on there is a little bit bigger than usual and designed especially for these guys. The rear brake, again, you start to notice this, it's Brembo, it's very high end. This isn't the stuff that comes stock. And you can see they've got everything zip tied or wire tied and just really prepped and built exactly the way they want it. All right, so again, this side of the bike, a lot of titanium. You can see that all the detail. They've drilled holes in the nut here, the bolt here, and wire tied that just to make sure it doesn't come loose. A lot of this stuff is just done to try to eliminate any chance of a DNF. And what I thought was really cool, I've never seen this little kite piece here that is part of the clutch system. Not sure even what the reason is for it. Maybe just better feel, different actuation. I'm not sure, but very cool looking. And again, solid billet titanium pegs. Pretty looking bike. All right, so really cool custom Akrapovic skid plate here. This piece obviously comes out and protects this part of the engine. They've got a really neat bracket here that's just holding these wires in place. Just cool little carbon pieces, and this is that cool kite part of the clutch system I was talking about. Never seen those before, not exactly sure what they do, but it just shows you the attention to detail. Maybe this is a feel, different feel to the clutch that they like, and cool parts and pieces. All right, we're here with Garrett Marchbank's bike over in the Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki pits. And these bikes are poured over top to bottom, like all these race bikes are, but Pro Circuit notoriously goes over these things from top to bottom. Everything from the titanium little nut here at the top, it's all zip tied, and every little part and piece. These arc levers are actually made of a composite. They feel like they're solid, but you can take these and bend them, and they'll slowly bend back into place, so they're not breakable. So a lot of cool little bits and pieces like that make it trick. All the banjo bolts are wired. There's a lot of stuff that's particular to each rider, like the type of grips they run, the bars, the things like that. But when you start looking closely at this thing, there's some really cool little aspects to it. Well, so something that's cool about Pro Circuit, they make their own bar clamps and mounts. And so they can make them in any height, any configuration you like. So you can see this is a +4. That might be height, that might be forward, I'm not sure, but they can mount them, build them and mount them either way. So this one can spin front to back and give you forward or back. I think this +4 is probably height. So that you can take your bar height, your mount height, and really have an unlimited number of possibilities of the way you want that bar to sit there. You can see these are full-on Showa Works forks, very cool stuff. This is top of the line stuff you can get. And then this titanium bit here is a Pro Circuit part, and basically it's meant when the bike gets hot and starts puking out antifreeze or coolant, it drops into here, and then as the bike cools back off, it siphons back in. So you don't spit out the coolant and then have a low coolant level later on in the race or later on in the night. Now, this is a cool part. Now, these radiators are not stock. These are purchased from a company overseas, and they're thinner than the standard ones. I don't know that they hold any more coolant, but they incorporate an oil cooler. So the actual engine oil is cooled by the radiator as well. You'll see this on some of the factory teams. It just allows them to build more compression into the engines that will generate more heat, and they're able to cool it and keep the operating temp down. So not cheap, probably not available to the public, but very cool. And then the engine mounts here, I know some people got on me because I talk about this so much, but it's I can't emphasize enough how important this is. And I mentioned you'll see different holes drilled, different size, different type of bolts. All of this affects the chassis and the way it handles. And we actually spoke with Bones, who's been the suspension guru at Pro Circuit for 34 years, recently on the Whiskey Throttle show about chassis and handling. And he said the chassis itself is responsible for 80% of how your bike handles. Suspension's the other 20%. So it's counterintuitive of what you think. So these mounts, the frame, the way all of those things work together equals how the bike is going to handle. All right, the suspension is sort of a finishing touch to it. So that's why these are so important, all these engine mounts and the way that they put those together. All right, obviously Pro Circuit doing all their engine work. This thing is a animal inside of here, but even from the outside, it's cool. They've gone ahead and made their own cover here, and some of that is just reliability, durability. This is prone to getting hit with rocks or whatever, so they wanted to make sure they had something solid. Same with the shift lever. They wanted to kind of design their own shape and whatever, so Pro Circuit sells this. They make their own linkages. You know, they've got a carbon little case guard here. And then really cool, these foot pegs. We saw this on the factory Cowie 450s. This bracket is designed to keep mud from packing in there. So when you hit a rut and the peg comes up, this little bracket under here keeps any mud from packing in there. And the peg, in theory, can never get stuck up, which is a super nice feature. They also make their own chain guides here in the back of the bike. There was issues years ago with the Cowies derailing chains. It's not really an issue anymore, but Pro Circuit's still making those in carbon fiber and selling them. Okay, so you get to the back here, there's some cool stuff as well. Again, you got the banjo bolt that's all tie and it's tied up. Carbon fiber guard on the brake. That's why if his boot comes in and instead of pushing the caliper over and creating slack in your brake, this protects that. That's what this is for. Some people will take these off, but it is good protection to have it. And then not only are these tie bolts, but the washer behind it is drilled out to reduce weight. And this is the first time I've actually seen these. So these rotor bolts, you got a braking rotor on here, but they have these little pits drilled out, which is what they call adding hollow, but just by taking material out to reduce some weight. And you're talking percentages of grams here. It's tiny, but it looks really trick, and it just shows you how far these guys will go to shave a little bit of weight. All right, we made our way into the Star Racing Monster Energy Yamaha pits, and we found the points leader's bike, the red plate here, Colt Nichols. And this thing's got some cool parts and pieces. These guys have the engine figured out. I think some of that comes from Yamaha just being a great platform, but these bikes are really quick. They've been winning championships with frightening regularity in the last handful of seasons. So let's go over this bike. Let's start up front on this thing. All right, so starting in the front of this bike and talking to the crew chief here at Star Racing Yamaha, we talked a little bit about the different rims, the Excel A60 being the strongest, firmest rim, and some riders preferring something that's a little softer like the Takasago that flexes a little more. The guy here is saying they basically just went with these because they're lighter. The A60, because it's stronger, does weigh a little bit more. So even though these may get a dent or a flat spot, eat more easily, it's lighter. And so bottom line, they wanted something that reduced weight. Kite hubs, which is kind of a go-to for a lot of these teams. They went with like a champagne color here, really cool looking. And Works Connection start device. A lot of teams rely on these Works Connection parts. They're very well made, make them for all kinds of bikes, all kinds of little different bits around the whole bike. And the Works Connection launch control, one of the most popular. Okay, so when you start looking at the engines on the Star Yamahas here, you see some really cool looking stuff. Starting with the Lightspeed skid plate. Lightspeed, Willie over there makes parts for a lot of the race teams, Pro Circuit, a lot of the factory teams, and the stuff is really nicely made. Bolts on, there's no weird clamps or anything. It's very clean, very nice stuff. And you see engine mounts again. I know I beat this like a circus monkey, but this is all titanium. You can see the rainbow color here, the little cutout there, and again, different titanium bolts. So they've done a lot of work with their chassis, trying to get it to handle the way they want. Cool looking little plug here in the frame. That's just to keep mud and stuff from packing into the axle bolt there, the through bolt. They use Recluse clutch, the torque drive manual clutch, a super strong piece. Those guys do an awesome job, and they've got everything all customized here, etched in with the Star Racing. Titanium Raptor foot pegs. These are a little different looking. You can see the whole inside is just hollow. And the design idea here is basically because of that big hole, it allows any mud to fall through, so you don't get mud packed into the peg. It's a pretty cool design. All right, another cool thing here on the Star bikes, this is normally the spot you'd have the water temperature sensor. And because this is a solid mount and it gets a lot of vibration from the engine, it would have a tendency to come loose. So they've manufactured this all in-house where they've made it in line with the coolant line here. So it gives a little bit, which gives this a little more room to wiggle with the vibration and jarring around. And they found it to be a little more reliable for those guys. So kind of a cool thing that they manufactured, and I'd be interested to see if this makes its way to production at some point down the road. All right, so this is neat. The team technician here was telling us that normally there's a window on the stock unit here to check your oil level, but just as an added safety measure, this is a factory Yamaha part that doesn't have the window. It's all sealed up. That way, it just eliminates the chance that that window could get cracked, you lose your oil, and you lose your brake. So these guys, like I said, they'll go to any length it takes to try to avoid a DNF, and this is one of those things that they did. All right, so this side of the bike, and these guys do definitely use some GYTR parts. This side cover being one of those things. You can pick this up at your Yamaha dealer or at Yamaha Genuine Parts on their website. And it's just a cleaner fit finish. I think it's tucked in a little bit tighter, a little bit more sturdy. It's protected well from the Lightspeed skid plate, but you know they want to obviously go that extra mile for durability and reliability. And it's promoting their company GYTR there. On this side of the bike, again, you get a good look at the engine mounts. This is all titanium, and this thing looks ready to go. We'll see if Colt Nichols can hold on to that red plate. All right, guys, we're in the JGR Yoshimura Suzuki pits. We've got Jimmy Dakota's bike here, and really cool looking. They've done some, which I'm surprised I haven't seen more of this. They went with a matte graphic on these, and it's just a cool look, but it also gives you a little bit more grip than what like a shiny finished graphic would. But just a really cool look. And these guys have some really rad in-house built parts. Let's check it out. So up front on these bikes, Works Showa kits, really good suspension. They've got the coating on the sliders. Things are looking trick. Works connection start device here. These are factory clamps. This is all from Suzuki. You can see they're running Get ignitions, which are a pretty popular brand. And then some cool netting on the front of the radiators just to keep out mud. We had that mudder at A1, so keeps any kind of mud from sticking to it, and also if there's any big rocks that would maybe sneak in between the louvers, it just catches it and keeps it from damaging the radiator. All right, so looking at the right side of the bike, they're running a full Hinson clutch setup here. All the cases are anodized, are treated, coated, you can see that. They build their own carbon fiber in-house, so this is a JGR part that they design, which is cool because it lets them kind of create whatever shape they want, protect whatever they feel like they need to protect. So it's cool that they've got the capability back there in North Carolina to build that stuff. You can see he's got a little titanium pedal here for the brake. These are all solid billet titanium pegs. They make those in-house as well. And then you can see this grip tape here he's got on the frame. I used to run something real similar. I would actually run clear skateboard deck tape, and anywhere my legs touched, I would run that stuff. Tears the hell out of your boots and pants, but it gives you just more contact, better contact with the bike. So when you get kicked or you want to lift with the bike, you've just got better contact with it. You can also see up here on the radiator, they're running some extra bracing. That way if you do fall and push on this thing, it supports it a little more, less likely to crack and leak fluid. All right, so you can, obviously they make it very clear who's doing the engines over there. JGR's doing all those in-house. They're running a Hinson cover on this side as well. You can see this custom-made piece here to hold the clutch cable. Just eliminates some of the flex. The pot metal that these would use stock does have a little bit of flex to it, so this just gives you a much more solid feel to the clutch. They build their own case saver here. This is a factory Suzuki shift knob. Again, they're making their own pegs. And you can see here, they've actually drilled some holes out. These guys will test with different variations of that, trying to get the right kind of airflow. You know, for the Nationals, this might get too much dirt right at the filter, but for Supercross, you don't really worry about that. So if you need more airflow, real easy to drill some holes and get it. JGR, again, making their own chain guide back here out of some type of composite. They can kind of manipulate that and control the clearances and things, make it however they want. These are factory Suzuki hubs, super cool looking. This is kind of they've had the same look on the factory Suzuki hubs for a long time. And then another thing I want to mention is the Dunlop tires. Pretty much every single team in this pit is running Dunlop tires, and it's the same tread. They all run the same pattern for the most part, like at 99% of these tracks. And Dunlop has been the one company that's just been committed to the sport, and that's why these are really all you're going to see on any of the top bikes anymore. All right, we're in the Geico Honda Factory Connection pits here with RJ Hampshire's bike, and this thing is beautiful. I told the guys here, Dan Betley and Kibby and the guys, best looking Factory Connection bike I think I've ever seen. Just really looks sharp this year. And starting right here on top with this tank, all titanium. This is a factory Honda tank. And the reason they're running it is because it goes with a different airbox design, a factory airbox that allows them, it's shaped in a way that allows them to run different velocity stacks internally. So it's really the only combination, and they have to run this tank in order to run that airbox in order to make that work. So not only does it look incredible, it actually, there's a performance component to it as well. And this thing is rad front to back. Let's start at the front. All right, so starting up top here on the front end, these are all factory Honda clamps, factory Honda bar mounts, and they've got, again, different variations of height, forward, back, whatever you like. Those guys have a lot of options to test and try to figure out something they like. Everything's titanium, banjo bolts are all tied. These guys really crossing their T's and dotting their I's, making sure everything is just the way they want it. Showa A-kit suspension, obviously all done by Factory Connection. That's been their bread and butter of that company for a long time, and they certainly know what they're doing. All right, race teams are always trying to get the biggest possible radiator they can to keep these engines cool, especially on the 250. It's really important because you're turning higher RPMs. And the twin pipes on these Hondas created a problem for these guys. So they had these radiators manufactured by an automotive company to a specific spec, and you can see the clearance. I mean, they're butted right up to the frame on the top, and there's very little clearance on the bottom here to get to the nuts to hold the exhaust system on. So they've tried to maximize as much space as they could. On a bike that has only an exhaust just coming off one side, you'll notice most of these brands are able to make the radiator on the opposite side much longer. So in order to get an equal amount of volume, Honda had to really squeeze every last little bit of space they could out of these radiators. All right, lots of stuff going on the side of this thing. First of all, as I mentioned, these radiators, in order to get the longer length, they actually had Yoshimura build them in a header that sits down a little bit lower and gives them more room to work. So this was all something custom they did in order to suit that. You can see, again, all titanium, different little holes in the engine brackets. These cases, even though they don't look it, they're OEM cases, just coated. Full Hinson clutch system. A lot of the internals, they do a lot of the work in-house, but they do have access to factory Honda parts, so you'll see kind of a mix of those things there. These are factory Honda pegs, all titanium. They've got a titanium brake pedal pad here, and little Yoshimura, little parts and pieces that pop on. And again, you can see a carbon fiber bracket here for some of the electronics that mounts up to that custom airbox. All right, the front end of this bike is pretty too. So this front disc guard is actually made by Asterisk, and you'll see that they're making parts for different companies, different race teams in carbon fiber. Even though they're known for their knee braces, they do have the capability to do this, and they're making awesome products. Not really marketing it. They're not sure if they even have plans to sell it to the public yet, but you'll see a lot of their stuff on different race teams. Moto stuff is referring to the rotor. It's a 260 rotor that they have on there. You can see this polished Nissan caliper. Very, very cool, very nice stuff. All right, so this side of the engine, a lot of stuff going on as well. You can still see they're running a bung out of the exhaust here. I asked Kibby about that, their engine technician and kind of head technician here, and he said basically these first few rounds, they're still getting different mapping. They pull that information to do different maps. And with the electronics now, it just gives them a lot of feedback where they can make changes and little adjustments just to make things better. Again, OE case here on the side, just coated. They got a Pro Circuit shift lever here. Again, we see the Thai factory Honda pegs. This is a really cool part though. On the standard Honda, the case guard has a bolt that drops into the case on the back here. And if you ever sling a rock through there and it breaks that bolt off, you'll actually leak oil out of that bottom plug. So rather than even use that, they don't use it at all. They've had this thing designed, it's a little beefier, and they bolt in here and here. That way if a rock does come through and break this off, you're not gonna leak oil and DNF the race. Again, there's a lot of effort that goes in to avoiding a DNF. Because if you're in a championship chase, which these guys would expect to be, you just certainly don't want to have that happen. Again, you'll see a lot of these connectors. Everything is so much electronics going on these days that all these connectors are really cool, and you can check out all the different ways that they're holding them together. They're just a little more reliable than what you'd see on a stock bike. All right, on the back end of this bike here, you've got factory Honda hubs. They're running the DID Dirt Star rims and some cool carbon fiber Yoshimura RS9 exhaust. I'm sure they've done a million different settings for these and run through a whole bunch of different stuff to find what exactly they like. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a lot of green plastic shavings. I think that's from the side of Adam Cianciarulla's bike from A1. I'll have to check with him, but either way, RJ's ready to go for this weekend.